Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Renny Harlin's film Die Hard 2, Die Harder. It is sometimes just called Die Hard 2. It's sometimes called Die Harder, sometimes called Die Hard 2, Die Harder. But I think Die Harder was originally the tagline of the film rather than a proper part of the title. Anyway, that's not that important. So, my partner and I did our annual Die Hard films marathon, and so on Christmas, and then a few days after Christmas, we watched the third one, Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I will be making a video about. But because we did our annual Die Hard marathon, and I've only ever made a video about the first one, you're now getting videos about 2 and 3. So, the original Die Hard trilogy is much more it's much more at the rhythm of the Indiana Jones trilogy than of the Star Wars trilogy, in that the first film and the third film are really quite good, and the second film is less so, which is sort of the Indiana Jones structure. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade are really good films. Temple of Doom isn't as much, as opposed to the original Star Wars trilogy, in which A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi are all amazing movies. So, Die Hard 2 is once again a Christmas movie, but interestingly enough, nobody seems to debate whether or not this one is a Christmas movie. It is once again set at Christmas. There are Christmas gags throughout. It is set in Washington Dulles International Airport, and one of the problems that the people run into is that it is a holiday week, and so there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of transportation of presents, goods, etc., going through the airport. And so when a group of basically mercenaries led by Colonel William Stewart show up and start essentially hijacking Dulles' systems in order to prevent planes from landing or to crash them when they, in order to sort of enforce cooperation. The fact that it is Christmas week makes a huge difference in terms of the operations. So again, next Christmas, don't ask people whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Ask them whether Die Hard 2 is a Christmas movie. John McClane happens to be there because he is waiting for Holly. They are visiting her family, who apparently lives in the DC area. So Stewart and his militia, or his mercenary guys, take over the airport, basically in a sort of hostage situation, because they want to secure the release of General Ramon Esperanza, who was a South American dictator who despite being a right-wing strident anti-communist type, has for some reason been arrested by the U.S. The fact that he's a major drug dealer. So this is one of those things. In reality, the U.S. would never give a fuck about this. The U.S. government pretends that it is concerned about drug dealing out of South America, but the U.S. has spent lots and lots and lots of money, and this is a matter of historical record, you can look it up, supporting right-wing dictators, including some of the most horrific people in history, people who have run death squads, who have disappeared large portions of their own populations, etc., etc. The U.S. has given tons and tons of money to right-wing dictators throughout Latin America, provided they at least claim to be anti-communist. This idea that, oh, he was selling drugs, therefore we would, topple his regime. No, son, that's not how the U.S. works. But Stewart plans to break Esperanza out of custody, and they are going to take a bunch of money and go somewhere without an extradition treaty, because Stewart claims that the U.S. has basically prevented people like Esperanza from properly going after the communist menace. In reality, that's fucking nonsense. I mean, the CIA has backed so many coups in Latin America of people promising to go after communists, even when in reality they've gone after just their own political opponents and maybe people who are like moderate trade unionists or whatever it is. And they've gone after those people with brutal force. And again, this is a matter of historical record. There's no real debate about this. Many Americans don't know about it because we don't know anything about our own history. And we certainly don't know very much on average in the U.S. about the history of other countries, particularly in Latin America. But this is Stewart's idea, right? We, the U.S., we've been too soft on the communists, and we need to really empower people who are going to do horrific violence at mass scale to their own population in the name of anti-communism. Stewart has a really well-developed plan for how to actually, defeat all of the attempts by the air traffic control people, the airport police, etc., etc. What he doesn't count on is John McClane happening to be there in an unofficial capacity. And whereas the airport police, the air traffic control people, etc., etc., consistently fail to do anything effectively against Stewart and his dudes, John McClane consistently foils them. This, of course, is one of the ways in which we know this film is fantasy. But, so we have that stuff. Then, another dude shows up, Major Grant, who has a sort of special forces unit, a blue light team. They show up, and basically they're like, so Grant is protege, a former comrade of Stewart's, and basically he's like, I'm going to take Stewart down because I know how he thinks. That seems to go okay for a little bit. There's some gunfights, etc., between them. But John McClane finds out that actually Grant and Stewart are working together. They have planned this meticulously. The gunfights between the two factions were done with blanks, which actually, once you know that detail, when you rewatch the movie and start watching those fight scenes, you're like, There's a remarkable absence of any bullets hitting the building that Stewart's mercenaries are holed up in, and there's a remarkable lack of anyone getting shot, despite this being a gunfight with large numbers of automatic weapons, assault rifles, submachine guns, etc., etc. No one actually dies. And you would think, or I would think, if you had two groups of special forces people, or former special forces, firing a large number of rounds at one another, at least one person would be shot. That doesn't happen. Now, again, the first time you watch the movie, when you don't know that it's going to be blanks, you probably don't notice that. But once you know that detail, you're like, okay, you thought you could fool me. Not this time, movie that I already know the outcome of. So that's going on. And ultimately, McClane sort of hand-to-hand fights a number of people. He gunfights a number of people, etc., etc. He eventually fist fights both Grant and Stewart on the wing of a 747 as it's preparing to take off. And then finally, he manages to pull the fuel dump thing. And then once he gets knocked off the plane, he lights that fuel dump. The trail of jet fuel blows up the plane. The air traffic controllers are able to take control of all the things again. But before that occurs, all of the planes, including the one that Holly McClane is on, which is nearly out of fuel, they need to land. They all manage to land using the trail of burning jet fuel, basically as a sort of runway light. And it's a happy ending. Yay! It's not a bad movie. But compared to Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance, numbers 1 and 3, this one is clearly the weakest. Partially because it doesn't have a Gruber. We don't have Hans Gruber from Die Hard. We don't have Simon Gruber from Die Hard with a Vengeance. Of course, played by Alan Rickman. Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, and Jeremy Irons playing Simon Gruber, two amazing actors. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a Die Hard without a Gruber in it. That's all I'm saying. More Gruber.